Welcome to Becoming Limitless. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to optimize their life for freedom. I'm going to teach you how to upgrade your health, money, and mindset so you can have more energy, time freedom, and financial independence. I'm your host, Tanessa Shears. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Becoming Limitless podcast. Today, I am so excited to welcome back Kate onto the show. So Kate Solovieva is a powerhouse in the coaching industry. She has over a decade of experience, has helped over 1,000 clients and mentored more than 200 coaches. And not only does she have a deep academic background in psychology, trauma, cognitive behavioral therapy, but she's also a writer and a mom. Talk about juggling it all. Like, you do it all. And Kate's expertise lies in helping people optimize their lives and businesses. And today she's going to share her insights on how we can effectively use AI tools to do just that. I'm so excited to have this conversation. But before we dive into the world of I have to ask, if AI could help you with just one part of your life, what would it be? And making dinner doesn't count.
Oh, I was totally gonna say making dinner. I think we'll get into some fun uses, but I remember one of the fun things that I've done. I actually had dinner planned already, and then I took a picture of the insides of my wine fridge, and I asked which of the wines would be the best pairing with the dinner that we had. So it was a solid recommendation.
I love that. I love that. And just to give you guys listening a little bit of context, Kate and I have been working together for just about 7 months. We just about wrapped up. And during our work together, I feel like every other week, Kate was throwing in some AI tool or way of using ChatGPT. And I'm just like, hold the phone, say that again, write that down. Like, that is so cool. And after we recorded our last podcast episode, all on thriving through winter, I was like, okay, we need to talk about AI because this is not only is it cool, but you're like a gold mine of resources when it comes to stuff about that. So let's start here. Give us a bit of background on how you became interested in AI and specifically building it into your health and your business.
Well, little known fact, I almost ended up in computer science very long time ago. Like, as in, I've actually applied to all the university programs in computer science, got in, and got through a semester. And then I decided I kind of hated computer science, which I knew, but I needed to double check. Also, immigrant parents. So there's that. And I switched to psychology. I really thought, suspected, and that ended up being true, that I wanted to work with people, not so much computers. Interestingly enough, I've always been an advanced user of technology. So I feel like I really welcome opportunities to make my work easier, more streamlined, or more personalized, because I'm really passionate about coaching that is rapport based and relationship based. Now I work with folks primarily one on one, and this is a very small like handful. So I'm like very passionate about finding ways to make it even more individualized. So I think AI just feels like has an infinite number of possibilities to do just that. And I think about maybe a year and a half ago when ChatGPT was just coming into the common usage, I started playing with it, and also had an opportunity at the company I work for to develop a course on using AI for health and wellness professionals. So I ended up co-teaching it with a couple of colleagues, and we actually taught over 400 health and wellness pros on how to use AI in their like health, business, and working with clients. And I've been in that rabbit hole ever since, never left.
This is so cool. So, this is a bit of off on a tangent, but with the introduction of AI, artificial intelligence, if you're listening and you don't know what AI is, there's obviously a lot of chatter around all of the careers that it may or may not replace coming in. Now, I'm so curious in this health space where what we do as coaches, a lot of us is not only do we assist with the accountability part and creating consistency, but we do provide the knowledge. Do you see AI as more of a competitor or an asset to people in the coaching space? Like, let's say over the next couple years when we can somewhat predict what AI will look like.
I see a lot of parallels with other tech that has entered our like day-to-day life in the last 50 years. And I think what we're seeing right now is very similar to Photoshop and photo editing software coming into play whenever that was now, 20, 30 years ago, where I think the conversation back then was like, oh my God, the world's ending. Photographers are going to be out of a job because you can create anything, you can edit anything, you can put any person into a picture, and what is even true, right? And of course, that has not happened. But what has happened is that photographers now use Photoshop on a daily basis. It's become part of their workflow. It has allowed them to express their creativity in a different way. And you'll even see where there will be photographers who use various editing tools, and they actually, like, those editing tools allow them to have their own very unique style. Right? Like, it's the way they edit their photos and the lighting and the adjustments that they make. And I really think this is similar here, where if AI is going to replace any particular jobs, it is probably going to be first of all going to be the jobs that are very repetitive in nature. And I would argue that those are the things that maybe should be replaced, because we humans can find other more creative uses of our time. So if machines can take over tasks that are automatic, repetitive, and, to be honest, boring, then hey, maybe that is a good thing. But when it comes to tasks and jobs and responsibilities that include like critical thinking and evaluation and creativity, which is actually a good chunk of the white collar jobs, consider like the job you have, the job I have, like working with people, coaching, communication. We're long ways away from being outsourced. And I think that the other big factor there, and I will say this again and again, even if ChatGPT will say exactly the same thing to you as I will, you will receive it better from me. It will mean more to you coming from me, simply because you're a human and I'm a human, and there is that species relation that we have, like relatedness, right? It's simply not the same coming from Google, LLM, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever have you, right? Like, so we will always have that humanness, like the common humanity going for us.
Well, and that's why I think the idea of community is going to be so important in businesses as well, right? Because that's something that it's that human to human relating to other people thing that won't be able to be replicated. So I think that building in all the touch points with different humans, I think is something that's so advantageous. I always just love to think of all the ways that like how could AI assist us? What are the ways it could compete? Because I think those of us that are able to embrace it to enhance what we do, I think are going to thrive, right? Because if we can eliminate, and I mean, this isn't any entrepreneurial profession. If you can eliminate those low level tasks, like what do you free up your brain to do? And that's what we want to do. Free it up for higher level thinking, higher level creativity, finding new ways to solve your problems for your clients, right? But I'm so curious to watch it unfold and watch what happens when AI is able to show up on a Zoom call like this and it looks like you're talking to a person, like when that technology comes. I'm so curious to watch and see if human emotion will relate to an AI image video that is conversing with them as well as a real human if they know one is human and one is not. I love it.
Well, I feel like most people probably both underestimate what AI can do and overestimate what AI can do, right? Like, so I think when we're talking like, oh my gosh, like, AI is going to replace strength coaches. I think we're kind of overestimating what AI can do for a bit. But I also think we're underestimating a lot of what it can do. And I know we'll talk a little bit about that today, right? Because on one hand, yes, it's an obvious path to try and use AI for tasks that are repetitive. But at the same time, you talked about the higher level thinking where ChatGPT or a similar LLM can be a fantastic thinking partner, right, in making some of those higher level decisions. So I played with some experimenting where I watched kind of a heated discussion, let's say, unfold in an online community. And like one of my specialties, my day job is managing large online communities and of course conflict management, right? And that can be an interesting thing to do. So what I've done, I've screenshotted a whole bunch of responses on a thread that where people were just going
Chattering
at
away.
it, getting angry, right? So I screenshotted a whole bunch of responses and I fed it to the bot and I explained the situation. I said, like, hey, like, so here's been a particular business decision that made folks pretty upset. And here's why, like, what would be your suggestions on how to like crisis manage? And before I've asked that, I took a second to really consider what I would do, right? Like as a
Yes.
person in that
Yes.
role, right? Like, so I kind of had some thoughts of how I would go about it. And when the strategies came back from the bot,
What was it?
I was I was pretty blown away because it was almost like to the dot what I had written down, right? And I remember like thinking in that moment, like, honestly, if this is the kind, like if this is the ability of the model, like I'm not even upset, right? Like I'm just impressed, right?
Like, I've
This is
trained you well.
that's
Good job.
right. Like that is actually really, really cool.
Oh, that's so cool. And I mean, I totally get what you say about like what you were saying about the strength coaches not being like potentially replaced, because I feel like I saw you post this on Instagram. It's like there's a difference between why you don't just go grab some random workout off the internet and do it. So it's different than actually having a personal trainer. Like, I've been a personal trainer since 2008, and I gave it so many parameters. I was like, this is my athletic level, this is this. And then I asked it to make me a specific type of program and it spat it out. And I was like, this is so basic. I mean, like, it doesn't have that. I'm like, it doesn't think the way I do. It doesn't work in, are we getting a frontal plane movement? Are we getting a push, a pull? Like, I've just noticed that at this point, our brains work so much better at just because based in our real life experience. But like you said, it's not replaced it yet. It can't do the job yet. But it also sounds like what you're saying, training the bot can make it better. And that's, I think, one thing that I'm not very good at yet is training bots, but we'll get into that. I'm curious. I know that you said before that AI should be treated as a habit or like a daily practice rather than a one-time solution. Because how can we, like, as entrepreneurs, begin to build this habit of using AI or get better at it without feeling overwhelmed and not knowing what to even do with it?
Well, I think everyone has like heard they should be using AI, right? And for folks that are like ready, able, and willing to do just that, like they're very much on board with wanting to use AI and they feel probably quite a bit of FOMO. Like I feel I should be using AI, but I don't know how to use AI. So they fire up AI, they fire up ChatGPT, and then they don't quite know what to do with it, right? And I mean, I've been that person. I've opened it up, and I think the very first thing I asked it to do, I was like, write me a limerick about carrots, right? Like, and everyone has done a version of that, and then you kind of get the limerick back, and you're like, okay, that's cute, but now what do I do with the limerick? And like, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
So I really think that because it is a tool, we have to approach it as a tool. And I think I'm thinking of like, imagine somebody hands you this very large, very sophisticated food processor for Christmas.
Mhm.
And you're like, I should really use it. Like you've watched the 2 minute trailer. It looks so impressive. That food processor practically like makes your dinner for you, but you actually have to figure out how to use it, right? Because you can't just open it from the box and start pressing buttons. Like you kind of have to sit down, you have to read the manual and have to think. So it's a project. And I think that might be helpful in itself. It's the framing of me learning how to use AI, me learning how to incorporate AI into my work, into my workflow, into my daily life. It's not going to be something I just do on a Tuesday morning, like let me just fire it up and press a button. It's going to be a project. So, and the project that requires practice and deliberate, like actual deliberate daily action of some kind, just like we would do with anything else. Now, this is the underestimate, overestimate again, because I think most folks probably overestimate how long that would take. And I've seen estimates, we say like you become an expert with 10,000 hours. But with something like this, if you actually spend about 10 hours in deliberate practice, you will notice a significant improvement. And 10 hours is 20 minutes a day for a month.
Mm, mm.
1 month, right? And I love 30-day challenges. I know you do too,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like, so
do.
this is how I really love setting it up, where it's like, okay, well, we're at the end of November as we're recording this. Like, literally, you could just look at the calendar and the first of the next month, by the end of that month, you actually could really significantly improve how well you know, understand, and use AI tools in your workflow.
Yeah, I think you taught me something really interesting too, which is like you don't have to have your brain come up with all the ways to use ChatGPT. Ask it because you came into it. This is y'all know listening to this podcast. Like I love Brooke Castillo's stuff. Like she was the first one. That was my first intro to the coaching world. And Kate's like, well, why don't you just ask ChatGPT to like, how would Brooke coach through this situation using her model? And I'm like, wait a second, you can get ChatGPT to act like somebody you want, like Brooke Castillo. And that's the thing that I think we don't really recognize is that our ability to understand how it works and to use it and what to prompt it with are skills that grow. And like I was saying, asking it like, hey, how else should what other coaching styles might benefit me? Like, is it you mentioned things like reflective listening, motivational interviewing, cognitive behavioral therapy. Oh, there are so many other ways, but you don't always have to rely on your brain to know how to use ChatGPT. You can actually recruit ChatGPT. I was like, that's cool.
Yeah, when folks ask, like, well, do you think I could use it to do this? It's like, well, just ask, just play with it, right? Like, you can literally find out. Like,
Mhm.
you could just ask and you could sit down for 20 minutes and say, I'm a criminal justice lawyer. What are some of the ways in which you think I could use you in my work? Be
Mhm.
very specific. Give me sample scenarios. Give me case uses. Like, give me examples.
Yeah.
How can you be helpful to me?
Yeah, it's so good. I hope we're not spoiling all the ones in the end, but I got to say one other one before I forget that you said to me that I was like, whoa, because I was playing with ChatGPT and trying to train it to be a life coach or train it to reflect back to me. And I was saying it's very action oriented. And this is where you suggested to me, like, well, why don't you ask it for different coaching styles? But you said something to me. You said, um, why don't you ask it to act as a committee? I'm gonna let you explain this because I was like, whoa, what?
So when we're talking to a bot, this is again like we're kind of limited by our own understanding of how human interaction works. Like if I'm talking to Tanessa, I'm just talking to Tanessa, but the bot doesn't have that limitation. So you can actually just have the whole multiple personality split thing happening where in one conversation, like you could have a panel, like you could just say, I want you to act as my rehab specialist team. So you're going to be my team of four. I want you to act as a chiropractor, massage therapist, physiotherapist, and a strength coach. And I will outline the symptoms of the injury that I have. And I want each of you of my panel of my coaching rehab team to provide me considerations, ideas, and things I should keep in mind as I move forward with my rehabilitation protocol. And then you will literally see like the responses will come from four different roles, from four different personas. So you could have a coaching team, you could have a panel, you could have a debate team, you could make the bot debate itself, right? Like you could actually have, two coaches with very different coaching styles coach you, right? Or argue each other. It's like the world, there's like no limit.
Yeah. Like, how cool is that? Literally in your pocket, you could have a team of experts that give you the collective knowledge of the internet. Now, given that this is also being passed through an AI bot, so room for error in there. But at the same point, like, how cool is that? Especially like because of Kate, I upgraded to ChatGPT Plus, and they have so many cool models in there. And specifically, I didn't know this. Now I know. If you upgrade, it's like $25 a month Canadian, $20 American, you can talk and have full on conversations. Like there is a feature you hit the microphone, and I had like a 43-minute coaching session. I was like, at first it was so weird. I was like, I'm just sitting in my kitchen by myself talking to a robot, but it's actually pretty freaking cool that you're having conversations and it's responding. And one other thing I did the other day was I was taking my kids to the dentist and they're 4 and 2. So they're all like, dentist, I don't want to go to dentist. So I told ChatGPT, I was like, hey, you're the dentist. Your name is this. Can you have a phone call with my 4-year-old and tell her how excited you are to see her? And literally, She got on the phone and had a full-on conversation. The dentist was like, "Great, how have your teeth been? I'm so excited to see. Did you brush them before you came?"
That's amazing.
She
I love
was,
that.
yeah, it was so exciting. So, after we did that, we did Santa next.
Oh, I have to do that now. That's brilliant. That's a
Yeah,
great use case.
ChatGPT ho ho ho's, I will tell you. And he does a very solid, you can pick the voice, but it doesn't,
Yeah.
the one we have picked does a very solid impression. My kids were just like, to Santa, which was so much cooler than the dentist.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, this is one of those things like where it takes the walk and talk to a whole different dimension. Like you could have a walking meeting, you could think through a thing. And this is so helpful if you are someone who needs to talk things out. Right? Because I know like I'm that person and I don't always have a willing victim that I can unleash my thoughts onto. And the bot has unlimited time and most importantly, unlimited patience. And I think like we really underestimate how important that is because it's that like not wanting, it's a very human concern of not wanting to bother people an extra time. Like we've talked about, like how will this come in as an assistant? I've worked with a strength coach, and my strength coach would send me the workouts for the week. At no point I've considered firing my strength coach and replacing him with ChatGPT. However, when I would get my strength workouts, I would take them to ChatGPT to help me like cue me, explain to me what muscles this is working because I didn't want to bug my strength coach. I could very easily get that immediately in the moment, right? Like without having to wait for the turnaround. In fact, one of my clients, I love this because I teach my clients to use AI tools like in their workflow. Is just something like I do on a consultation basis as well, just because it's so much fun. It's so fun for me when clients come back to me with like the fun use cases that they've come up with, where I literally had somebody say, Kate, I had a question for you over the weekend, but then I didn't want to wait till Monday. So I just told ChatGPT to act like you. And I was like, that's
Perfect. You
amazing.
you need a Kate bot now. I like there are people that are doing this, like influencers that are training bots to fully act like them. And I think that's such a cool thing, especially to address like the base customer service stuff. Like, where do I find my login link for this? Like those type of questions. So
Absolutely.
cool. Oh, that's awesome. So like let's go for what do you see as the big mistakes um people make when they're starting to use AI for their business or for their health or anything? Are there anything that stands out as like oh, if you could skip this step, you'd have a lot better of a
There
time.
are a couple of things. I think some of us are still treating bots like Google, right? Like it's like I ask a question and it gives me an answer, and that's not really what they do because even like you mentioned, having the knowledge of the internet, which is on one hand correct, but on the other hand, the outputs that we're getting, they're not searched. They're generated
Mhm.
anew every time, right? So I think that the common mistake is not going far enough, right? And not treating it as a conversation. Because I feel like that there is still a lot of pressure. Like we're under impression that it's like if you can just prompt a perfect like prompt, it's like who cares? Just go with your first shittiest prompt and see what you get and then tweak, 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 right? Like you can because that way you can just adjust what comes out, just like what you were saying earlier. Is like, oh, well, what I'm getting is too action oriented. It's like, great, just say, well, what I'm getting is too action oriented. Make it less action oriented, or make it this way. I want you to be more fluffy and touchy feely with me. I want you to be less touchy feely with me. Please, for the love of God, do not use the word, delve and pioneer
Journey,
journey,
navigate.
right? Yeah, like absolutely. Like, don't do
I'm
that.
so making the title of this episode Delve in with Kate and Tanessa as we navigate the journey of AI. I will never. That's too good. And you know what? That to your point though, like AI doesn't get offended if you're like, stop it, I don't like that. Like, you know what I mean? You don't have to worry about its feelings. And at the same time, you know how you were saying, like, I don't have to worry about ChatGPT getting impatient? You also don't have to worry about it having unconscious beliefs filtered through. Because I think even as coaches, we try to stay neutral as possible and to keep our biases and our opinions out of things. I think sometimes like it's human nature to want to help someone if you have a belief that this way would help them more than this way. You know what I mean? So ChatGPT will kind of come to the table with, I mean, we hope, an unbiased, neutral, like presentation of solutions. What do you think on that? Do you think it's biased? Do you think it gears towards certain, mm, anything in particular?
Well, I think there are definitely biases, and
Hmm.
we see those biases, right? Like it's interesting to notice like the leans sometimes. I
Okay,
found
tell
it
me
to
more.
be I probably found it to be most obvious and most easily demonstratable in text to image AI tools. So anything that generates an image, like because for funsies, you can just ask for an image of a 45-year-old woman and you will be blown away by a lovely, lovely old lady that comes out, right? Like, so it's just fascinating, right? Like to see, like, so text to image gives that opportunity to see the biases of the input data because the models are all trained on what's out there. And just like, if we go to Google search and we search pregnant woman, we're going to see a very particular type of a pregnant woman. She's going to be young. She's going to be white. She's going to have this like slim body with like a little pregnant belly, right? Like we're not going to see a whole lot of representation of bodies and races and right, like diversity. So consider then we have a model that is trained on the entirety of that. And we're
Hmm.
now asking for an image of, right? Like it's going to be limited by its own limitations, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
right? Like, so because the input is biased, we're definitely going to see some biases there, which is why I really feel like where we can we can use AI tools most effectively and even most safely is going to be in the areas of our own expertise,
Mhm.
right? Like, because we can then have that pair of critical eyes over the output that we're getting, right? Like, I would never dream of like using ChatGPT to help me make building measurements for a deck and then trying to build it. Like, because
No?
I know nothing about that, right? And I don't know if that deck, it might be great, or I might kill myself I probably will kill myself anyway, just trying to build one. But right, like this is something at the same time, my husband who works in construction can very much do that because he can have like a critical, it's like, oh, what's happening here? Like that's a little off, right? So you notice when you and I talk about using these tools, we talk about using them in health and fitness and wellness, in entrepreneurship,
Our
which
areas, yeah.
all fields that we're familiar with, and we can kind of
Mm.
have this critical check of like, does this make sense?
Mm. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Well, and when you were talking about text to image, just right before we jumped on, I was creating an image for the cover of my blog. I could not get the damn thing to give me two arms. I had three arms. I was like, all right, well, I need a better prompt. Please make a photo of a woman holding money with two arms. And I always have like six or seven fingers. I just decided to go with it. Everyone knows it's an AI generated like cartoon image anyways. But okay, so let's get into some of the like the actual uses of AI. I want to split this in two. Let's talk about ones you use in your business and we'll split it up with ones you use in your health. And if there's any overlap, we can go with it. So like let's talk business first. How do you support your business or make your business more efficient using AI? What are some of the sources you use?
I think the biggest piece that I can like think the biggest theme there, because I use it for various things. I use it for editing my newsletter or coming up with ideas for newsletter. And people talk about like, well, Kate, like your writing is so personal. How can you possibly use AI? And I was like, well, you read my last newsletter. Did it feel any less personal? Did you even figure out at which point I started using AI? Right? Like to help me with my writing flow. I can tell you it now has less mistakes, it flows better. It has better storytelling and it still sounds exactly like me. Because when we're seeing this very obvious ChatGPT generic output, all that signals is that you don't know how to use the tool. properly, right? Like, so it's kind of like shit in, shit out, and that's kind of what you get. It's like, well, trust me, the things you could be getting out if you were a little bit more skillful and thoughtful about how you're using the tool, right? Because otherwise, it is a food processor. If you're
Mhm.
throwing dirt in it, it's not going to taste very good, right? And you're complaining about the food processor. It's like, well, my dear, right? Like, let's look at the raw ingredients there. So there is, writing and editing and copywriting and social media, all of that, I think are pretty obvious examples that most people do think of. But I think bigger, where I find that AI gives me infinite ways of personalizing a client's experience, which is truly the opposite, I think, of what most people are concerned about, because they're like, oh my God, with AI, we're all going to sound the same and it's all going to be the same. And it's like, but it's actually the opposite. Like, where I'm thinking of a client whose kid had like a seventh birthday party, and I knew that she was absolutely obsessed with unicorns. So I created a custom birthday card for her. And it was a little girl with brown hair, who was friends with a unicorn. It was this like little cartoon card, and I got it printed and I got it sent. It was like the client was blown away, blown away. And so think about this for a second. I'm not going to print them in, 100 copies and sell them on Etsy. Like, I don't care to do that. It's this one-off use to make someone's day, which I did. And what would be required for me to actually do that without AI tools? I'm not an artist, I'm not a designer. So I guess I could hire an artist or a designer to do
Mhm.
just that. We would have to look at a turnaround of 2 to 4 weeks or more and really high cost. So
Mhm.
the truth is that I just would never do that as a small business owner, right? Like, just the scalability is not there.
Mhm.
So I would just have to do what? I would go to the store, I would pick the best birthday card that looked good, I would sign it, and I would send it in mail. Personal, absolutely. Sweet, yes. Would it be just as mind-blowing? Of course not. Right? Like the sending a card with a generic cupcake on it versus sending a card that was very clearly created, like with this little girl in mind.
That's awesome.
And that's really what I think of what AI can do. Like, I mean, I sent Tanessa a song before this podcast that was, AI generated about this exact interview. And
We're
I've done
playing
that
it
before.
on the outro, right?
I'm going to be playing that on the
If you
outro.
guys wrap this podcast up and you start hearing the best AI generated song about Kate and I on this interview, you're gonna hear it. I'm gonna play a minute of it just for you.
So one of the things I've been running for the last few years is a group coaching program for folks that struggle with winter called Operation Tigger. So I had this AI music generator come up with like a theme song that is all about bouncing through the winter and like enjoying the joys of Wonderland. Like, it is not going to be a song that we're going to be listening to now instead of like Metallica and Nickelback, right? But it was just so cute and fun, and it's that little bit of a spice, like, right? Like, it just makes you go like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's those little dashes of personality.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so cute. That's okay. So we have using it for social media, obvious the copywriting, things like that. We have it for personalizing the experience with clients. Are there any other ways you use AI in your business right now?
So I do use AI a lot as a thinking partner.
Mhm.
And this is where, like, the way my brain works, it goes in million like directions, and I have a million ideas a minute. So what can be a frustrating experience for me is that I have these random like notes, and like literally I'm surrounded by like little
Papers
writings,
everywhere.
pieces of paper, right? Sorry about that.
All good.
And what I can do then, I can copy and paste these completely random ramblings. And I've done that before. And I would say to ChatGPT, I will say, here are a bunch of random thoughts. I feel like there's a newsletter here. Can you help me pull out some themes?
Mhm.
And then it actually helps me put some structure on this mess that is in my head. And then I can actually take it further, and I can say, okay, so like let's develop this idea.
Mhm.
Right? It's like, okay, well, maybe there is this thing here where you're talking about your experience of struggling with body image when you're in high school. Okay, that could be a newsletter. Okay, great. I don't want you to just write this newsletter for me, because that's how we end up with generic ChatGPT output, because ChatGPT doesn't have my brain yet, hopefully, right? It doesn't have my exact memories and details. But again, I can say, okay, act as an interviewer. Give me open-ended questions that I can answer as a writer to make the story personal.
I love
And then
this.
it can come back at me with writing prompts. It can say, okay, well, think of the very first time you looked in the mirror and didn't like what you saw. Okay, I can do that. Like, would I have thought of writing that down necessarily? No, but I can answer that. And now I have this incredibly personal little tidbit in the piece of writing I'm working on.
Oh, I love that. That is such a cool way to do. I love that it asked me, interview me to help with this experience because I know like for podcasts like this, like I Kate and I did this on the last episode. She's like, "Here's what we should talk about." I was like, "Cool. AI is going to give us some guiding questions to go with." I have AI recording a summary right now. I take the summary, I pop it into ChatGPT. It gives me a description. It gives me the email. But the cool thing is like I've trained it to speak like me because I've uploaded so many samples. I'm like, this is my tone, this is my cadence, this is the style I like. And so what I do is then I take this output and I rewrite it. But like I kind of have the flow of it because I'm like you. I've got 400 ideas in here, especially when I do like the workshops in the group. I'm like, I don't know. I just want to talk about this and I have no idea for order. And it's like, well,
Right.
here's a flow that makes sense. And here's the order you talk about it to introduce things in a way that feels coherent. Like, I love it as a brainstorming partner. It's so good.
Well, and you notice also, like, I think you and I are very like clear and explicit on the
Mhm.
fact that we are using these tools in
Mhm.
our work. So you use ChatGPT to come up with questions for this interview. I use ChatGPT to come up with a pitch. Like when you were saying, like, hey, what do you think we could talk about? I literally did what I just said. I wrote down a random ideas and I gave it to the bot and I said, let's
Our
come up with
bots
a
are having
pitch.
a conversation, technically.
And maybe 5 years from now they will, right? Like where
Oh,
like
God.
my AI agent can talk to your AI agent and we will just have a margarita on the side. But you notice how despite both of us using these tools,
Mhm.
it's not replacing this very personal experience that you and I are having right now in the moment where we're having a
Mhm.
human
Mhm.
conversation and we're laughing and we're connecting and we're kind of pulling jokes, right? Like
Yeah.
this is a human experience that has been facilitated by our use of tools to
Yes.
just save us some time to do the things that we would have to do anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And they like even on what you're saying of this conversation, like I know we both have the questions pulled up here right now, but we've gone off tangents and down rabbit holes and with stories. And I think that's what it is it's using AI to like enhance what our brains or organize what our brains already had in it, which is kind of a cool way of thinking about it. And I know for me, like thinking about other ways that I use AI, we did up a fun little website because we're traveling a lot, and naturally people are like, well, how are you traveling this long? And the question becomes, they're like, well, how long are you going for? And you say something like 3 months, and that really opens the rabbit hole, and people start wanting to be like, how are you traveling for 3 months? So we put together a little website that just has like, here's find me on Instagram, here's my blog, here's the podcast, here's how to connect with us. And I had AI make that website in about 20 minutes. And then, of course, went through and tweaked and added my own photos. But even using AI for things like that to like give you a layout, because Lord knows I can't do that. I've tried. I'm terrible at layout on websites. So that's another thing I've used it for. Is there any last things that you think have helped
Oh, I think we're
business?
getting started.
Oh,
I
dear.
use it as I use it as tech support a lot, right? Like
Yeah.
so, where it's like, hey, I'm trying to do this thing in Zoom. How do I do
Hmm.
that? And it will
Hmm.
actually say, open up your Zoom account, click on a thing, scroll down to the thing, unclick whatever. And I was like, thank you, right? Like that's because again, like I could consider the alternative. Like if you're trying to figure out, like right now, how to change a Zoom setting where all participants on a call are muted by default. I know it's
Mhm.
there somewhere. So
And
I can poke around or I can search on Google or I
and
can
Lord
just
knows Zoom settings has 50 different area.
million.
Does it not? It has like you can click in like 40 different areas. I don't
Yeah.
understand. I have not figured it out. I don't know. It's
You
in
can
there.
ask ChatGPT.
That's brilliant. What a good idea. So good.
And
Okay. Well,
somebody else was just saying like that was also such a cool use case that came from a client who said like they've uploaded screenshots of their progress data, like months and months of measurements and like weigh-ins, and ask for a report of trends and like fluctuations and conclusions and what they thought. Like that was such a cool way, like because I think of what is really helpful there is feeding it information and coming up with conclusions. What
hmm
do you see? Like here's a screenshot of my Garmin or of my Aura for the last couple of weeks. Like help me see some trends here.
Yeah, even like to take case studies of clients and stuff like that and be like, help me make this into something that's helpful for other people. Or, oh, yeah, I love it.
Well, and
Okay,
repurposing is the great part. I think I know you were going to ask about some fun AI tools. We can kind of get into that
let's do
now.
that. Let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think like what you were saying, like how can I take this and make it into something else? Because I think like repurposing
hmm
can be something that AI can really be helpful with because when you think of like text to audio, text to video, there's a lot of potential there. So one of the tools, the cool tools that we can use that you actually might enjoy, it's called PodSnap AI. And it's not just the only one like that. There's a couple. But PodSnap AI allows you to specify podcasts that you're interested in. Like you just subscribe to whatever, like Sigma Nutrition or Andrew Uberman Lab, like whatever you're listening to. And whenever a new episode comes out, you get an email delivered with a short text summary and an audio summary of that episode. Like it's a two and a
Stop.
half minute generated audio summary of the podcast, which you can then listen in 2 minutes. And goodness knows, some of those podcasts are 2.5 hours long, right? Like you can listen to 2.5 minute summary and think
Mhm.
to yourself, okay, like that's cool, whatever. I don't really want to do anything with it, or that sounds really interesting, and I'm actually going to go and listen to the podcast.
Oh, so smart. It's like a way
So
of being more efficient with your own time. Because I know
um,
those can be long. And sometimes you get into
remember,
them, you're just like, this isn't it. Yeah.
there were all these services that you could sign up for that would give you like short summaries of books
hmm
where you guys like, I'm interested in this book, so I'm going to take a look at the short summary. And if that sounds interesting, then I will actually go and purchase and read the book itself. Right.
hmm
But I kind of have a little like main points, etc. Is this worth my time? So we've talked. You've mentioned the song that I had AI write for us. That's Suno, Suno, which is also a fun tool where you can play with some songs being generated. That can be a really fun client personalization little thing, right? Because you can like consider just sending a really personalized like birthday song to a
Yeah.
client where you
Yeah.
could mention like write a birthday song for Brian who's 37 years old and who lives in Berlin and who really likes tennis.
Yeah.
And it will be like, and it will be like a heavy metal or whatever Brian likes song, right? Like you could specify the style.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we got Podsnap, Suno. What else? What are some other favorites?
And the other one, I feel like I'm kind of like in the text to audio boat now. A lot of folks might not necessarily know, but 11 Labs. Have you heard about 11 Labs? So 11 Labs is the text to audio, and that's where you can go from text to like narrated text to narrated audio. You can pick one of the professional voices that are available there from a number of accents. But what is even cooler, I think, you can upload clips of your own voice and just have it cloned. So that way you can have your own writing narrated in your own voice. Like instead of actually narrating it, you can take hundreds and hundreds of blog posts you have probably written over the last like 10 or 15 years and have a podcast with your own voice in multiple languages if you'd like.
That's actually so cool, especially if you like do videos and like the hardest part is always doing the narrating over. But like the podcasts, oh, very interesting. I'm curious to test this out and see if like how it would sound. That'd be so weird listening to yourself if you didn't say it.
It is. Yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen
yeah.
I've seen tons of apps where like you can record video direct to camera, but like you're looking down because you're not comfortable with AI, and there'll be AI that'll make your eyes look right at the camera the entire time. I've seen that. I don't know what those are called, but they're really cool. Okay, any others that you love?
Those are some fun ones. And I think also here what I'm mentioning are like a couple of like one-off tools, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there are millions of AI tools and there are thousands coming out every day. And I really am a firm believer, like if there is some very, very specific task that you need done,
Mhm.
a specific tool might be helpful, right? Like such as 11 Labs, if you're looking to maybe turn your ebook into an audiobook, like that could be a really cool tool to do just that. But for the vast majority of us, just picking like a large language model that is easy to use. And I think for most of us, it's going to be something like ChatGPT or Claude, and just really playing with different use cases within your business for
Yes.
that. It could be as simple as, like I do this with coaching calls, like group coaching calls pretty regularly, where I just download a Zoom transcript.
Hmm.
It's a full text
Hmm.
of the Zoom call. I copy and paste it into ChatGPT and ask for it to come up with a YouTube description.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? Like in this coaching call, we discuss this, and this, right? And I can kind of tweak it, I can edit it. So even something that simple, but kind of coming up with various ways in which it would be helpful in your business to
Hmm.
use it. Like,
Yeah.
what are some, it could be, I think most people have gotten to this idea of like using ChatGPT for meal planning. But it's like, okay, are you actually meal planning or are you just bringing groceries home and snapping photos of groceries and actually asking it to design a meal plan based on the photos of groceries?
Ah, by the way, I will link the podcast episode that I did on using ChatGPT for what Kate just
Exactly.
said. So look in the description for it. That's so fun. Okay, before we wrap up, are there any health related AI uses that you use or have used with clients or client use cases that have been really helpful?
Well, I mean, depending on where you are, this may or may not apply. But for example, I've used ChatGPT to help me understand some of the results of blood-based work as I'm about to talk to my family doctor. So might say, hey, like here's some numbers. What do they mean? How do I think about these? And what are some of the questions I might bring to my family doctor? And
Mhm.
you notice how we're again bridging that gap there because I would never propose like let's use ChatGPT to diagnose, even though it's very, very promising from what I've seen in terms of like its uses in the medical field.
This is what I think. How many prescription errors are made by really fatigued doctors and nurses or like dosing issues that people die every year from? Like, if we can get AI writing, if we can count on it to be accurate prescriptions, it doesn't get tired. Like, it doesn't have human
Right.
error built in.
So, but for me, because medicine is not my industry, right? Like, this is where I'm going to be bridging the gap of like, hey, how do I think about this? How do I talk about this? What are some of the questions I can bring to my primary care doctor, right? Like, what are some of the ways in which I can approach the situation to get the care that I need? How can I advocate for myself to discuss this
Yeah.
concern? Like, what are some words that I use,
Yeah. Well,
right? Like,
especially if you like have a certain way you care to talk about your health. For example, you're like, I really like to lean into holistic remedies as a first line approach. What are the questions I could ask around that before turning to, I don't know, like, let's say someone doesn't want to take Advil for headaches until they've tried a holistic route first. That could be a really cool way to also slant your questions in favor of how you like to take care of your health. Everyone's different on that.
and I think it's also, I would even expand our use of it because, like we've talked about, like, how do we use it in our business and work?
Hmm.
And I think outside of that, it's not even just health, it's just how do I use it in my life?
Hmm.
Right? Like, and literally, like I've said, I'm hosting a party for my 6 year old. I want to come up with some, rules so they don't destroy my house. Like, how do I say it in 6 year old speak without sounding super scary? Right? And it just literally gives me like five
Yes.
guidance. Like, and I can, like, I'm not really super good at communicating with large groups of 6 year olds necessarily, like not my superpower, but then I can like get some ideas. And I was like, okay,
Mhm.
everyone, so we only have three rules today. Rule number one, like It's like, I didn't come up with that. This is
Yeah.
not my daycare voice. Like, no, I
My
had
daycare voice.
this is like I had ChatGPT help me along the way. It helped me come up with ideas for games for a birthday party. It can help me write a toast for a wedding. I used it to write incredibly personalized wedding vows for a wedding ceremony I officiated. Right. So kind of like where can it come in? The example I used earlier was like, hey, what do I serve with dinner? What goes well? And even like in terms of like cooking, simplifying everyday tasks, I think its promise with just executive functioning
Yeah.
is so promising. Like I absolutely love the intersection of AI and folks who have ADHD or neurodivergent in any way, because it can
Yes.
just really, again, it never gets tired and it never gets defensive and it never gets sick of you. So you can keep asking, like, explain to me again. I don't understand. Break it down for me. One of the things I really like using is just like screenshotting my calendar for the day. And I can say, I want to do this, this, and this. Can you help me plan my day based on what I already have going on? Right. Like, so the possibilities are truly endless. And I think playing with it where you can just experiment with different things like, oh, I wonder if I can do this. I wonder if I can
Mhm.
do that.
Yeah. And I think to add on to that, one of the things like me and my husband have been really into learning about blockchain technology for the last year. And I got to tell you, it's like learning a whole new language, but asking ChatGPT to like take the terms and make them like explain them at a seventh grade level,
Yeah.
like doing that kind of stuff. Like even like if you're writing, like you find something complicated, like I don't want to use the word dumbing it down, but like making it so that my brain that doesn't understand these words can understand it. Like there's so many ways. Gosh, I imagine we could probably just chat about this forever, but we are going to wrap up this episode. Now, Kate, where can people find out more about you, your newsletter? Where can we send people? And I'll make sure everything is listed in the description.
I think Instagram is probably the easiest place. So come on over and just drop me a message and say hello. There is a link to my newsletter, probably in my bio somewhere and pinned to the top. So it should be pretty easy to find. And it's at K underscore my last name, which we won't make you spell, but Tanessa is going to include that in the show notes.
Love it so much, Kate. Thank you so much for coming on and dropping so many little like nuggets and wisdom bombs on us about AI. I think it's such a cool way to frame AI as bringing it into not only our lives with our health, but with entrepreneurship as well. So thank you so much for coming on. And you guys are a special treat. You guys get to hear Kate and my AI song, and you get to jam out to it. I'm gonna play it for a minute. And I hope you guys enjoy it. All right, Kate, I'll talk to you soon. And everyone have a beautiful week. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Tanessa starts the show with flair. Kate's got stories that they'll share. Entrepreneur dreams take flight in digital realms tonight. AI mind that powers bright gives us visions in the night, building empires from our screens. Tanessa can rock our dreams. Questions filling like a stream. Future tech shaping the scene.